Oh, for stupid. Lake Calhoun is apparently back on the map. The State Court of Appeals ruled Monday the former Department of Natural Resources Commissioner Tom Landwehr lacked authority to change the name of the lake because the name had existed for more than 40 years. August 2018, Landwehr ordered the lake's name to revert to its original Dakota name, Bda Maka Ska. The federal government approved, and the signs around the lake were changed. But a unanimous opinion by the three-judge panel said the name will go back to Calhoun because Landwehr's action was illegal, and only the legislature holds the authority to change the name after it existed for 40 years. The dispute over the lake's name paralleled the national movement to remove the names of segregation and slavery supporters from monuments. Lake Calhoun was named in honor of John C. Calhoun, the seventh vice president of the United States from 1825 to 1832, and a senator from South Carolina. He was a staunch defender of slavery. Now you're saying to yourself, okay, wait a minute here. Who in the hell is defending John C. Calhoun? Let me introduce you to Eric Cardell, Kaardal, the lawyer for Save Lake Calhoun. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not exactly sure. You can't really tell with the bumper sticker, you know? The group that challenged the name, calling the decision a win for the holding of the system accountable. I think something like that. Yeah. You can't separate yourself from this. You can say, we just like the name. Now, just a little brief history. Lake Calhoun was named, I believe it was 1817. 1817, that was when the Army Corps of Engineers came up and surveyed the area, found this huge lake out, kind of southwest where Minneapolis would eventually be. It was the biggest lake in that region, and so they named it after the current Secretary of War at the time, who at that point was John C. Calhoun. And John C. Calhoun was such a kind of an idiot that, and by the way, you got to go see portraits of the guy. This was crazy eyes, man. This guy was crazy. These are his official portraits. And John C. Calhoun looks like he's ready to, start licking a pig or something.
Yeah, I was going to mention, you got to see his portraits. I mean, the guy is just...
I'm the vice president. Yeah. It's like, do not allow that man to have a sharp object. But he was a war hawk, and he was for the War of 1812, which was hilarious. I mean, he wanted to fight a war with Britain, who basically, after the Revolutionary War, spent 20-plus years updating their military and getting it into a fairly prestigious place as a pretty premier military fighting force. And then the United States, who, didn't realize how good, George Washington and this game plan we had to defeat them was, and of course the French. Heaven forbid we recognize the French for helping us out. But needless to say, he wanted to pick a fight with the British. Outside of the Battle of New Orleans, pretty much the rest of the War of 1812 was an utter disaster for the United States of America. They actually burned down the White House. You had the First Lady frantically pulling paintings off of walls and running them out the building, while the president, in the only time in history, actually took command of a military unit, an artillery unit, and started ordering the artillery unit to fire on the British as they were marching at them. That was the only time that's happened. So, yeah, and by the way, thank God Trump can't do that. Fire on the FBI instead of the British. The FBI's the real... There's some protesters. Fire on them, too. They're the real enemy of the American people. Thank God. Anyway, so, he wasn't named. It wasn't like... he was named because he was just, everything was getting named at this point. They were wiping out the traditional Native American names for these areas. They were trying to put in European-centric, white Eastern American names and all this stuff. So basically, Harriet's named after Harriet Lovejoy, was it Commander Leavenworth when he was over at Fort Snelling. That was his girlfriend. And that's why Harriet's named Harriet. I mean, that's how you know. It's like, hey, who's the girlfriend? I'm Harriet. All right, Harriet, we got a lake, Harriet. Hey, By the time there was lakes up in like Lake 9, Lake 10 up in the north. They just got so they couldn't figure out what to name them. But instead of leaving them with the traditional Native American name, they still it's just Lake number 16, whatever. Anyway, so there you go. That's why Calhoun's got the name. John C. Calhoun was a horrible human being. A horrible, horrible human being. No, this is not like the debate you have with, first of all, there is no debate. Slavery was horrible. It was wrong. It was an abomination on our country and our history. And the same way, the way we treated Native Americans was wrong, an abomination on our history. You can look at what the founding fathers did as far as the independence movement for the United States, but once again, that's a fair argument that you can point out that was basically for rich, wealthy white men that were trying to, and they were willing to use the poor, the meek to fight their wars for them. They had some good strategies. Declaration of Independence is a good read, and they set up a system of democracy, which of course right now we're undermining greatly with this president. But we can have discussions about this, but when it comes to slave owners, there are interesting layers that when you look at someone like a Thomas Jefferson, and I'm not condoning any of his behavior or any capacity, but I mean, when you look at some of the good things that the guy did, and you can have that discussion about the good and the bad. John C. Calhoun was 1,000 pounds of just crap. He just was a horrible human being. Many Southern politicians have excused slavery as a necessary evil. In a famous speech on the Senate floor in 1837, Calhoun asserted that slavery was a positive good. He rooted this claim in two grounds: white supremacy and paternalism. All societies, Calhoun claimed, are ruled by an elite group that enjoys the fruits of labor of a less exceptional group. He said this on the Senate floor, for God's sakes. Senator William Cabell Reeves of Virginia early had referred to slavery as an evil that might become lesser evil in some circumstances. Calhoun believed that conceded too much to the abolitionists. Calhoun's treatment of his own slaves included an incident in 1831 when a slave named Alec ran away, then threatened with a severe whipping. Calhoun wrote to his second cousin and brother-in-law asking him to keep a lookout out for Alec if he was taken, to have him severely whipped and sent back. When Alec was captured, Calhoun wrote to the captor, "I'm glad to hear that Alec has been apprehended, and I am much obliged for you for paying the expense of apprehending him. He ran away for no other cause." Well, outside of he was going to get whipped, for God's sakes. But to avoid a correction in some misconduct designed to serious to prevent a repetition, I wish to have him lodged in jail for 1 week, to be fed on bread and water, so tortured, and to employ someone for me to give him 30 lashes, well laid on, at the end of the time. I hope you will pardon the trouble. I only give it because I deem it necessary to our proper security to prevent the formation of a habit of running away. I think it better to punish him before his return home than afterwards. He didn't want to do it in front of his own slaves, so he basically had someone else do it for him. Calhoun rejected the belief of Southern leaders such as Henry Clay that all Americans could agree on the opinion and feeling that slavery was wrong, although they might disagree on the most practical way to respond to that great wrong. Calhoun's constitutional ideas acted as a viable conservative alternative to Northern appeals to democracy, majority rule, and natural rights. And there are people that look at Calhoun and they say, well, he voted for tried to help minority rights, but not as we know minority rights. He was fighting for the less populated states of the South, the white men who believed in slavery, which he considered the minority. And as a matter of fact, a lot of our governmental system, which was set up with these checks and balances where the minority has a say in the majority of the world, actually came from Calhoun, but he was there because he already could see where slavery was going, so he was trying to fix the deck of the playing deck to prevent it so where he could not, the pro-slavery people could have a say in things and not be wiped out by the anti-slavery people. He was of the mindset that any new state, not Mason-Dixon, not the Missouri Compromise stuff, any state that came in the Union should mandatorily be slave states. That's who this guy was. And you support him because you can't separate yourself. No, I'm Eric. I'm not going to let you and your little clown car group get away with this. I am not going to allow you to sit there and say, well, it's just the name. No. If it was Hitler Lake and someone sat there and said, no, we got to keep it Hitler Lake because the name has been there for 40 years, that I would have some real problems with the group that's behind it. And so you can sit there and say, it's just, we want our prestigious little name back. You are supporting an atrocious human being, a horrible human being who proudly fought for slavery, who basically, once again, the rule claimed all societies are ruled by an elite group that enjoys the fruits of and labor of a lesser exceptional group. That's what he said, for God's sakes. He said he proudly supported slavery, proudly, and you proudly have kept his name on that lake. Bravo! Big day! Oh! And the reality is you clowns sit there and say, well, if you remove his name, how is anyone going to learn? You want to remove his name, but you don't want anyone to look into this guy's history because this guy is an atrocious jackass that should never have gotten a name, lake or street or a sewage pit named after him, for God's sakes. My personal feeling is fine. You want to go to Calhoun? I say we ring Lake Calhoun with African-American volunteers who every 100 feet you can find out a new stat of historical accuracy about John C. Calhoun. And see how your famous name that you are defending with such pride and glee stands up. The reality is you don't want people to know what John C. Calhoun was all about. You don't want people to be aware of what was going on. He was just put on there because they were running out of frickin' names. That's the only reason his name was there. And yes, we went through the Civil War and this, and we probably should have changed it a long time ago. But we finally did the right thing. But here you are. Proud day, Eric. And the Save Lake Calhoun group. Proud day indeed. You have defended the right of an atrocious, racist bastard. Good for you. Proud day, Eric Cardall. Proud day. Oh. Proud day indeed. You disgust me. All of you disgust me.